Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today into something that affects a lot of people,
Hmm.
depression and anxiety, but we're going beyond the surface.
Yeah.
We really want to understand the root causes of it all, the things that often get missed.
Looking at the bigger picture, like
Hmm.
the social and cultural factors,
Yeah,
the stuff that contributes to these conditions.
exactly. And we have a guide for this deep dive. Johann Hari's book, Lost Connections.
Oh, great
He's
book.
gotten praise from some big names, Eve Ensler, Bill Maher, Thomas Frank, and it's for good reason.
Yeah.
Hari doesn't just point out the problems, he offers solutions.
Yeah. Ways to reconnect and heal.
Exactly, like real ways to get better.
And it challenges some assumptions, too.
Okay, like what?
What, like that common idea that depression is just a chemical imbalance?
Yeah,
Just a chemical imbalance in the brain.
right, the whole take a pill and you'll be fine kind of thing.
Yeah, and Hari kind of digs deeper. He tells the story about getting food poisoning in Vietnam. He thought he was dying and expected like profound flashbacks, like your life flashing before your eyes.
Right.
But instead, all he could think about was work.
Really?
Even on the verge of death, he was still disconnected from what truly mattered.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And you know what the doctor told him? You need your nausea. It is a message.
Hmm. Okay, so let's unpack this. What does food poisoning have to do with depression?
Well, Hari uses this experience as a metaphor, just like nausea signals that something's wrong physically.
Right.
Depression and anxiety might be signals that something's wrong in other areas of our lives.
So it's not just about a lack of serotonin or whatever in the brain.
Right. It might be a sign that we're disconnected from things that are essential for well-being.
Okay, so what kind of things?
Things like, meaningful work, genuine relationships, a sense of purpose.
So you're saying antidepressants aren't effective at all?
Not necessarily. They can be helpful for some people, in the short term at least, but they don't address the root cause. And that's where Harry's work really comes in.
Okay.
He lays out 9 different causes of depression and anxiety.
9.
Yeah, and he frames them all as different forms of disconnection.
Well, okay. That's a lot to unpack. Where do we even begin?
Well, let's start with something many of us can relate to, disconnection from meaningful work.
Okay, I'm listening.
Hari tells the story about Joe Phillips, who felt trapped in a soul-crushing job at a paint shop.
Yeah.
He would just shake paint cans all day long, day after day.
Oh my God.
He felt hopeless, like his life had no purpose.
I can't imagine doing that for years. No wonder he was depressed.
And Joe's story isn't unique. Studies show that a staggering 87% of people don't enjoy their work.
Wow, 87%?
Yeah, that's a huge chunk of the population feeling unfulfilled and disconnected from what they do.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense though, right? Feeling powerless and unappreciated at work can really impact your well-being.
Absolutely. It's about feeling disconnected from something that should provide you with meaning and purpose.
Totally. It makes you wonder how many people are dealing with depression and anxiety because they're stuck in these meaningless jobs.
Yeah, and this brings us to another major cause, disconnection from other people.
Okay.
Think about it. We're social creatures by nature. We crave connection, belonging, intimacy.
Right.
But in modern society, especially in Western cultures,
Yeah.
we're becoming increasingly isolated.
I feel that it's easy to get caught up in our own little worlds.
Yeah, especially with social media and all the technology we have.
Exactly.
And the research on this is pretty eye-opening. John Cacioppo, a leading researcher on loneliness, found that it can be as harmful to your health as obesity.
Seriously?
Yeah, loneliness can be as harmful as obesity.
Wow. I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that serious. What does loneliness actually do to our bodies?
Well, Cacioppo found that loneliness triggers this stress response in the body,
Right.
which leads to increased inflammation.
Oh, wow.
And then a whole cascade of negative health effects.
It's kind of scary. So it's not just about feeling sad or isolated. It's actually damaging our physical health.
Exactly. And Robert Putnam, the sociologist who studied social capital,
Yeah.
he talks about how we're bowling alone more than ever before,
Yeah.
We're losing those community ties, those shared experiences.
Yeah, like that sense of community you mentioned with the Cody protest.
Exactly. And without those strong social connections, we're just left feeling adrift, like we don't belong anywhere.
Yeah.
And that can be a major contributor to depression and anxiety.
Right. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's not just about our jobs and our social lives, right? What about our values? Like what we believe in?
That's a great point. That leads us to the third cause, disconnection from meaningful values.
Okay.
Hari argues that our modern culture is pushing us towards what he calls junk values.
Junk values.
Yeah, things like materialism, status, constantly chasing external validation.
Oh, yeah, I know all about that.
Yeah.
Social media is like the breeding ground for junk values.
Exactly. It's all about the likes, followers, showing off how perfect your life is.
Right.
But we all know deep down that it's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
And the research backs this up. Tim Kasser, who's studied materialism and well-being,
Right.
found that achieving those junk values goals, they don't actually make us happier.
It's like chasing a mirage,
Yeah.
right? You think it's going to quench your thirst, but it just keeps moving further away.
Precisely. And what's even more concerning is how early this starts. Kasser found that even young children are susceptible to these junk values.
Really?
Just a couple of commercials for a toy were enough to make kids choose to play with a mean boy who had the toy over a nice boy who didn't.
That's disturbing. So we're being programmed from a young age to value things that don't actually matter.
It seems that way. And when we base our self-worth on these external measures of success, we
Right.
set ourselves up for disappointment, anxiety, a constant feeling of not being enough.
Yeah. Okay, this next one is heavy but important. Disconnection from childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Hari goes into the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, the ACE study,
Oh, yeah.
which found a really strong link between childhood trauma and a whole range of health problems, including depression and anxiety.
Yeah, and the statistics from that study are shocking.
Yeah.
People with 7 categories of childhood trauma had a 3,100% higher risk of depression.
It's unbelievable. And we're not just talking about like physical or sexual abuse here.
Right. Trauma encompasses a much broader range of experiences. It
Okay.
could be emotional neglect, witnessing domestic violence, growing up with a parent struggling with addiction or mental illness,
Right.
even just feeling constantly unsafe or insecure.
And these experiences can have like a ripple effect throughout our lives, even if we're not consciously aware of them.
Exactly. Heron even explains how obesity can be a coping mechanism for past trauma.
Really?
A way to create a physical barrier against the world, a way of saying, don't hurt me anymore.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it also makes sense. You know, if you've experienced trauma, you're going to want to protect yourself,
Right.
even if those defenses end up harming you in the long run.
Yeah, and the problem is if we don't address that underlying trauma,
Right.
we're likely to keep repeating those same patterns in our lives.
Yeah, attracting unhealthy relationships, struggling with addiction, you know.
Exactly, sabotaging our own success.
Okay, let's move on to the fifth cause. Disconnection from status and respect. This kind of sounds like the junk values thing we were talking about earlier.
It is related, but it goes a bit deeper. This is about our place in the social hierarchy,
Okay.
about feeling valued and respected within our communities and society as a whole. It's not just about being rich or famous.
So it's not about keeping up with the Joneses.
Not exactly. It's about feeling seen and heard, about having a voice that matters.
Okay.
Hari draws on the work of Robert Sapolsky,
Okay.
a primatologist who studied baboons in Kenya.
Baboons. What do baboons have to do with human depression?
It's fascinating research. Sapolsky found that baboons at the bottom of the social hierarchy had significantly higher levels of stress hormones. And this chronic stress led to a whole host of health problems, like heart disease and weakened immune systems.
So being low on the totem pole can actually make you physically sick.
That's what the research suggests. And what's really interesting is Sapolsky found that the stress wasn't just about being low in the hierarchy.
Right.
It was the unpredictability and lack of control that came with that low status.
So it's not just like where you are in the pecking order, but how secure you feel in that position.
Exactly. And this applies to humans as well. Studies have shown a strong correlation between income inequality and rates of depression and anxiety.
Okay.
When you live in a society with vast disparities in wealth and status,
Right.
it can create this sense of insecurity and hopelessness, even among those who aren't necessarily struggling financially.
It's about feeling like you're on the outside looking in, like you don't belong.
Precisely. And that feeling of exclusion can be deeply isolating and damaging to our mental health.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about our connection to nature? Is that a factor in all of this?
Absolutely. That's actually the 6th cause Hari outlines. Disconnection from the natural world.
Okay.
And this one's kind of personal for me because I spend way too much time indoors staring at screens.
Oh, me too. I'm definitely more comfortable in a city than I am in the wilderness.
But Hari makes a really compelling argument that this disconnection from nature has real consequences for our well-being.
Okay.
He points to research showing that spending time in nature can actually reduce stress, anxiety, and depression.
What is it about nature that's so beneficial?
Well, think about it. We evolved in nature. Our bodies and minds are still attuned to its rhythms and patterns.
So we're like hardwired to be in nature.
Exactly. And when we deprive ourselves of that connection, something fundamental within us starts to feel off-kilter.
It's like we're missing a vital nutrient or something.
That's a great way to put it. And the good news is that you don't have to go on like a wilderness retreat to reap the benefits of nature.
Right.
Even small doses like taking a walk in a park, gardening, or just looking at pictures of nature can have a positive impact.
Okay, this is starting to make a lot of sense. We've
Yeah.
talked about feeling disconnected from our work, from other people, from our values, from our past, from our place in society, and now from nature. It's like all these different aspects of our lives are out of sync.
Exactly. And that brings us to the seventh cause, disconnection from a hopeful or secure future.
So we're talking about feeling uncertain and anxious about what lies ahead.
Right, and it goes beyond just everyday worries. It's about feeling this fundamental lack of agency,
Okay.
the sense that we have no control over our own destinies.
Mhm.
Harry tells the story of Chief Plentycoos, a Native American leader who witnessed the destruction of his people's way of life.
Oh, wow.
He described his life after being forced onto a reservation as nothing happened.
That's so sad, like losing all sense of hope and purpose.
Exactly. And while that's an extreme example, I think many people today can relate to that feeling of powerlessness.
Right, especially with everything going on in the world.
Yeah, like climate change, political instability, economic uncertainty.
It can feel like we're on a runaway train heading towards disaster,
Exactly.
and there's nothing we can do about it.
And that sense of helplessness can be incredibly demoralizing.
Right. No wonder people feel depressed and anxious.
And this lack of control over our future is often compounded by the precarity of modern work.
Which brings us to the eighth cause. Disconnection from meaningful control.
Oh.
This sounds a lot like what we were just talking about.
It is related, but this focuses more on the day-to-day realities of our work lives.
Okay.
Harry shares the story of Angela, who was struggling to make ends meet,
Okay.
working multiple insecure, low-wage jobs.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Juggling multiple gigs, never knowing how much you're going to make each month.
Yeah, always worried about getting your hours cut.
Exactly, or losing your job altogether.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for chronic stress and anxiety.
Exactly, and it's becoming increasingly common in the gig economy.
Right.
Millions of people are stuck in this cycle of precarity,
Yeah.
with no sense of stability or control over their own lives.
It's like you're on a treadmill, running as fast as you can, but never getting anywhere.
Precisely, and that feeling of powerlessness can be incredibly demoralizing.
Yeah.
It can lead to a sense of hopelessness and despair, which are hallmarks of depression.
Okay, so we've covered 8 causes of depression and anxiety so far, all stemming from these different forms of disconnection. What's the 9th one?
The 9th cause is disconnection from a caring tribe.
Okay.
And this one gets to the very heart of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
We are social creatures hardwired to connect, to belong,
Right.
to feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves.
We talked about that earlier with the loneliness research.
Exactly, but this goes beyond just having friends or family.
Yeah.
It's about having a deep sense of belonging,
Yeah.
of being seen and accepted for who you truly are, flaws and all.
Like having a tribe that's got your back no matter what.
Exactly. And Hari argues that modern society, with its emphasis on individualism and competition,
Right.
often undermines this basic human need.
It's like we're taught to go it alone, to be self-sufficient, to not rely on others.
Yeah, but that goes against our very nature.
Right.
And the research suggests that it's making us sick. Collectivist cultures, which emphasize interdependence and social support,
Right.
tend to have much lower rates of depression and anxiety.
It makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
If you know you've got a community that's there for you no matter what, takes a lot of the pressure off.
Exactly. It gives you a sense of safety and security, a feeling that you're not alone in facing life's challenges.
Okay, so we've just explored 9 different causes of depression and anxiety, all stemming from some form of disconnection. It's a lot to take in,
Yeah,
but it's also incredibly insightful. It's like we finally started to understand the root of the problem.
exactly. And the good news is that once you understand the causes, you can start to address them. And
Yeah.
that's what we'll be diving into next.
Okay, I can't wait. Okay, so in part 1, we explored these 9 causes of depression and anxiety stemming from disconnection. But knowing the problem is only half the battle, right?
Yeah, for sure. What can we actually do to reconnect and heal?
Right. What are the solutions?
Well, the good news is there are concrete steps we can take, both individually and collectively,
Okay.
to address those underlying causes.
So it's not just about like taking medication or going to therapy.
Those things can be helpful for some people, but they often just treat the symptoms, not the root cause.
Okay, so what are some of these more like fundamental solutions?
Well, Harry outlines several approaches that he calls social antidepressants.
Social antidepressants.
Yeah.
I like that. Way better than the pharmaceutical kind.
Right. They're all about fostering genuine well-being, rather than just masking symptoms.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these social antidepressants. Where do we start?
Let's start with reconnection to other people. Harry shares this really inspiring story about a neighborhood protest in Berlin
Okay.
called the Cody Neighborhood Protests.
Okay, a protest. How does that reconnect people?
Well, the residents of Cody were facing this familiar problem, rising rents and the threat of displacement.
Right, gentrification.
Exactly. The protest started small, but quickly grew into this powerful movement
Okay.
that brought together people from all walks of life.
So it was like a shared struggle that united them.
Exactly. They had Turkish immigrants, German hipsters, students, retirees, all working together, supporting each other,
Oh,
and relying on each other to keep the protest going.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So what happened? What was the outcome?
Well, they fought for lower rents, but more importantly, they created this profound sense of community and belonging.
Okay.
Hari describes how they had to guard the protest camp in shifts,
Right.
and they were randomly paired up often with people they didn't know well or had even been suspicious of before.
So they were forced to like interact and collaborate with people outside their usual circles?
Exactly. It was this beautiful example of how shared challenges and collective action can break down barriers and create genuine connection.
Wow, it's like they discovered a common humanity that transcended all their differences.
Precisely. And this sense of connection didn't end with the protest.
Oh, that's great.
It spilled over into their everyday lives, creating a more vibrant and supportive community.
So it wasn't just about achieving like a political goal or whatever. It was about creating this sense of belonging and shared purpose.
Exactly. And that's something we can all strive for in our own communities.
Okay, so collective action is one way to reconnect with others.
Mm-hmm.
What about our jobs? We talked earlier about how soul-crushing work can lead to depression and anxiety.
Right.
Is there a way to find meaning and purpose in our work lives?
There is, and Harry highlights the cooperative model as a promising solution.
Oh.
He tells the story of Baltimore Bicycle Works,
Okay.
a worker-owned and operated bike shop.
Okay, a bike shop. How does that address the issue of meaningless work?
Well, in a cooperative, the workers have a say in how the business is run.
Okay.
They share in the profits, and they have this sense of ownership and control over their work.
So it's not just about showing up and punching the clock. They're actually invested in the success of the business.
Exactly, and the results are pretty impressive. The workers at Baltimore Bicycle Works reported feeling significantly happier, less anxious, and less depressed
Oh, wow.
than when they'd worked in traditional top-down organizations.
So it's not about the type of work itself.
Yeah.
It's about like the structure and the relationships within the workplace.
Exactly. It's about feeling valued, respected, and empowered. It's about knowing that your voice matters and that you have a real stake in the outcome.
Right. That's so powerful. It's like they've created this mini community within their workplace.
Exactly. And that sense of community is a powerful antidote to the isolation and alienation that so many people feel in their jobs.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about reconnecting with others through collective action
Right.
and finding meaning in our work through cooperative models.
Yeah.
What about those junk values we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
How do we reconnect with values that actually matter?
That's a great question. And Harry shares a story about Nathan Dungan, who conducted an experiment with families in Minneapolis,
Okay.
helping them identify their intrinsic values.
Hold on. Intrinsic values. What does that even mean?
It means the things that are truly important to us, the things that bring us joy and fulfillment regardless of external rewards or recognition.
Oh.
Things like spending quality time with loved ones, being creative, contributing to our community, connecting with nature.
Right, so it's about figuring out what really lights us up, what makes us feel alive, what gives us a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And it's about making this conscious effort to prioritize those values in our daily lives.
So in Dungan's experiment, what did the families actually do?
Well, they worked together to identify their intrinsic values
Okay.
and then made this conscious effort to align their actions with those values.
Yep.
So they might have started having regular family dinners, taking up a creative hobby, or volunteering in their community.
Okay, and what was the impact?
Well, the families reported feeling happier, more connected, and more fulfilled. They were no longer chasing after those empty goals,
Right.
but were living in alignment with what truly mattered to them.
So it's not about giving up everything we have or drastically changing our lives. It's about like shifting our focus,
Yeah.
making small but intentional changes that bring us closer to our values.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of how we spend our time and energy
Right.
and making sure that our actions are in service of what truly matters to us.
This is really resonating with me. I think we've all gotten so caught up in chasing that external validation and those material possessions.
Yeah.
But deep down, we know that real happiness comes from something much deeper.
Absolutely. And the good news is that we can choose to reconnect with those deeper values, even in a culture that often bombards us with these superficial messages.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about reconnecting with others, finding meaning in our work, aligning our lives with our values. What other social antidepressants are there?
One that's getting a lot of attention is social prescribing.
Social prescribing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting approach that recognizes that health and well-being are about more than just physical symptoms.
Okay, so it's not just about going to the doctor when you're sick.
Right. It's about addressing those social, emotional, and psychological factors that contribute to our overall well-being.
Okay.
Harry tells a story of Lisa, a woman who overcame severe depression
Okay.
through a program called social prescribing
Okay.
at the Bromley by Bow Center in London.
Tell me more about Lisa's story. What was she struggling with?
Well, Lisa had been struggling with depression for years.
Okay.
She was isolated, withdrawn, and felt completely hopeless. Traditional treatments hadn't worked for her,
Right.
but then she was referred to the Bromley by Bow Center,
Okay.
where she joined a gardening group.
A gardening group. How did that help her depression?
At first, she was really hesitant.
Yeah.
She was anxious about being around other people, and she didn't think gardening would really help. But she decided to give it a try.
So she stepped outside her comfort zone.
She did, and it turned out to be a transformative experience.
Wow.
Through the gardening group, she reconnected with nature, she started exercising, and most importantly, she started connecting with other people.
So it wasn't just about the gardening itself.
Yeah.
It was about the community and the sense of belonging she found.
Exactly. She formed friendships with the other members of the group,
Right?
and she started to feel this sense of purpose and connection.
Awesome.
Her depression lifted, and she was able to reclaim her life.
That's incredible. It shows how something as simple as joining a group and doing something you enjoy can have this huge impact on your mental health.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of social prescribing.
Yeah.
It's about connecting people with activities and resources that meet their specific needs and interests.
So what else does the Bromley by Bow Center offer?
Oh, they offer a wide range of programs and activities.
Okay.
Everything from art classes and cooking groups to exercise groups and support groups. They
yeah.
take this really holistic approach to healthcare,
Right.
recognizing that our well-being is influenced by this complex interplay of factors:
Yeah.
biological, psychological, social, and environmental.
It sounds like they're treating like the whole person, not just the illness.
Exactly, and social prescribing is gaining traction. There's growing evidence that it can be an effective and cost-effective way to address depression, anxiety, and a whole range of other health issues.
That's really encouraging. Gives me hope that we can find more creative and compassionate ways to support people who are struggling.
Absolutely, and it shifts the focus from individual responsibility to community care.
Okay, let's talk about a solution that might be a bit more controversial, a
Right.
universal basic income.
Ah, yes. This is a really interesting idea that's gaining a lot of attention these days. Harry highlights the Mincome experiment,
Yeah.
which took place in Canada in the 1970s.
Remind me about the Mincome experiment. What exactly do they do?
So during the Mincome experiment, residents of this small town called Dauphin
Okay.
were given a basic income, enough to cover their basic needs, regardless of their employment status.
So everyone got a guaranteed income whether they were working or not.
Exactly, and the results were pretty remarkable.
Okay.
Poverty rates plummeted, hospitalizations decreased, and mental health improved significantly.
Wow, so just having that financial safety net had this huge impact on people's well-being.
It did. It seems like having that basic security freed people up to pursue their passions, take care of their families,
Right.
and contribute to their communities without the constant stress of financial insecurity.
Yeah, that makes sense when you're constantly worried about making ends meet. It's hard to focus on anything else.
Exactly. And it's not just about reducing stress, it's also about giving people a sense of agency and control over their lives.
Right, it's like saying, we trust you to make good choices with this money. We believe in your potential.
Exactly. And that kind of trust and support can be incredibly empowering.
Of course, universal basic income is a complex policy with a lot of potential challenges and implications.
Oh, it is. But it's a really interesting idea that deserves serious consideration, especially as we face increasing automation and job displacement, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay, we've already talked about the importance of reconnecting with nature. Is there anything else to add on that front?
It's worth reiterating just how powerful this connection can be. We've become so accustomed to our indoor technology-driven lives
Yeah.
that we forget how essential nature is for our well-being.
We talked about how our bodies and minds are still wired for that connection.
Exactly, and the research is clear. Spending time in nature reduces stress, anxiety, depression. It can boost our immune systems, improve our sleep,
Yeah.
even increase our creativity and problem-solving abilities.
So it's not just about feeling good. It's
Yeah.
about improving our physical and mental health on this fundamental level.
Precisely. And it's not about like grand adventures in the wilderness.
Right.
Even small doses of nature, like taking a walk in the park, gardening, or even just looking at pictures of nature can have a positive impact.
Okay, this next one is something I'm really intrigued by. Reconnection through psychedelic-assisted therapy and meditation. I've heard a lot about this lately. What's all the buzz about?
This is a really fascinating area of research that's experiencing this resurgence of interest after decades of prohibition.
So we're talking about using substances like magic mushrooms and LSD as therapeutic tools.
Yes. But it's really important to emphasize that this is not about recreational drug use. This is about using these substances in a safe, controlled,
Right.
therapeutic setting with trained professionals.
Of course. But how can psychedelics possibly help with depression and anxiety?
Well, Hari shares a story about Mark, who was struggling to cope with the grief of losing his father.
Oh, wow.
He tried traditional therapy and medication, but nothing seemed to help.
Right.
Then he participated in a clinical trial using psilocybin,
Okay.
the psychoactive compound found in magic mushrooms.
Okay, and what happened?
Well, during the psilocybin session, Mark had this profound mystical experience that
Okay.
completely shifted his perspective on life and death. He was able to confront his grief, connect with this sense of universal love and interconnectedness,
Oh, wow.
and let go of the pain he had been holding on to.
That sounds really intense,
Yeah.
but also incredibly healing.
His depression lifted, and he was able to move forward in his life with this renewed sense of purpose and meaning.
So it's like the psilocybin helped him access this deeper level of awareness and break free from these limiting beliefs and patterns.
Exactly. And this is just one example, but there's this growing body of research
Right.
showing that psychedelic-assisted therapy can be effective in treating a range of conditions,
Good.
including depression, anxiety, addiction, and PTSD.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think that these substances, which have been demonized for so long,
Yeah.
could actually have such profound therapeutic potential.
It is, and it's important to remember that it's not about the psychedelic experience itself. The therapy component is crucial.
Right. So the therapists help people prepare for the experience,
Yeah.
process what comes up during the session,
Right.
and integrate those insights into their everyday lives.
Exactly. It's about using these substances as tools for personal growth or transformation.
Right. So while psychedelic-assisted therapy might not be accessible or appropriate for everyone, is there something else we can do to cultivate that kind of deep self-awareness and connection?
There is. And it's something anyone can do. Meditation.
Meditation, you mean like sitting cross-legged and chanting Om?
It can be that, but it doesn't have to be. Meditation is simply the practice of bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment.
Okay, that sounds doable. But how does that help with depression and anxiety?
Well, when we meditate, we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
Okay.
We start to create space between ourselves and our inner critic,
Right.
between ourselves and our anxieties.
So it's about becoming more aware of our internal landscape.
Exactly. And as we become more aware, we start to develop this sense of self-compassion and acceptance.
Okay.
We realize that we are not our thoughts.
Right.
We are not our emotions. We are something much vaster and more expansive than that.
That's beautiful. It's like we're reconnecting with our true selves.
Yeah.
The part of us that's always whole and complete.
Exactly. And that connection with our true selves is the foundation for genuine healing and transformation.
And there's scientific evidence to support this, right?
There is. A growing body of research shows that meditation can reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. It can improve focus, attention, emotional regulation. It can even change the structure of our brains in positive ways.
So it's not just some woo-woo feel-good practice. It actually has tangible benefits for our mental and physical health.
Exactly. And the best part is that it's free. accessible to anyone. And you can do it anywhere, anytime.
That's great. So while psychedelic-assisted therapy might not be for everyone, meditation is this powerful tool that we can all use to reconnect with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us.
Precisely. It's a practice that can help us cultivate the same kind of self-awareness, perspective, and connection
Yeah.
that people often experience during psychedelic sessions.
This is so inspiring. We've covered so much today, from collective action and worker cooperatives to social prescribing, universal basic income, nature connection, and even psychedelics and meditation.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has.
Mm.
And it's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to depression and anxiety.
Right.
But what all these approaches have in common is this focus on connection,
Yeah.
on addressing those underlying causes of disconnection that are driving these epidemics.
Yeah.
We've explored these 9 causes of depression and anxiety, and we've seen how it all comes down to disconnection.
Yeah.
But we've also looked at these amazing solutions, like reconnecting through social prescribing, finding meaning in our work,
Right.
and even, tapping into the power of psychedelics and meditation.
It's been a really insightful journey exploring all these different ways to reconnect and heal.
It really has.
Yeah.
And, while these individual solutions are super important, I feel like there's this whole other layer to this.
Yeah, for sure.
Johann Hari talks about the need for systemic change,
Yeah.
for actually creating a society that supports our well-being.
That's a key point. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these problems,
Right.
we're just tiny little boats tossed about in this vast ocean of despair.
Yeah.
But Hurry reminds us that we're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Millions of people are feeling the same pain, the same sense of disconnection.
It's like we've been sold this lie that depression and anxiety are just personal failings.
Exactly.
Like something's wrong with us as individuals.
Yeah, but the evidence suggests otherwise.
Totally.
These are signals that our fundamental human needs are not being met.
Right. We need meaningful work,
Yeah.
genuine connection,
Yeah.
a sense of belonging, a hopeful future.
Exactly.
And when those needs aren't met, we suffer.
Yeah, it's not a sign of weakness. It's
Right.
not a character flaw.
It's a natural response
Exactly.
to an environment that's just not conducive to human thriving.
It's like trying to grow a plant in barren soil without sunlight or water. It's going to wither and struggle. We need to create the right conditions for human beings to flourish.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we actually create a society that supports well-being rather than undermining it?
Well, it's a complex challenge, but there are a lot of promising approaches.
Okay.
We can support policies like universal basic income, that
Right.
provides a safety net,
Right.
reduces financial insecurity.
Yeah. That would definitely ease a lot of stress and anxiety, just knowing you have that basic level of support.
Exactly. And we can advocate for worker-owned cooperatives, which
Yeah.
give people more control over their work and their lives.
We talked about Baltimore Bicycle Works earlier.
Yeah.
That's a great example of how that model can empower workers and create a more fulfilling work environment.
Right. And we can create more community spaces and programs that foster connection and belonging.
Okay, like what?
Think about community gardens, libraries, art centers,
Right.
places where people can come together, share their passions, and support each other.
Those spaces are so vital, especially in today's increasingly isolated world.
They provide a sense of grounding and connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can fight for environmental policies that protect and restore our connection to nature.
Yes, that's crucial.
We've already talked about how important it is to spend time in nature, but we also need to make sure that we're protecting and preserving these spaces for future generations.
Right. Access to nature shouldn't be a luxury.
Right.
It's essential for our well-being.
Totally.
Right.
And we can challenge those cultural messages that promote materialism, competition, and isolation.
Absolutely. We need to start questioning those messages
Right.
and promoting values that support connection, collaboration, and compassion.
It's like we need a cultural detox,
Yes,
a shift away from the me mentality towards a we mentality.
exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Right.
Our well-being is dependent on the well-being of others and the well-being of our planet.
This deep dive has been so insightful. We've uncovered the real causes of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
We've explored all these potential solutions. It honestly feels really empowering to finally understand this issue on a deeper level.
I agree.
And we want to leave you with a final thought. What forms of disconnection might be contributing to your own feelings of depression or anxiety?
What steps can you take to reconnect and find greater meaning, purpose, and joy in your life?
And how can you contribute to creating a society that supports the well-being of all? Remember, you're not alone in this. There are millions of people who feel the same way, and together we can create a world where everyone can thrive